Hello and good morning. I am Sam Culper from Forward Observer. It is Monday and I'm taking a day off. So let's give our thanks to Columbus and his crewmen and happy Conquered People's Day or whatever else they're calling it. I want to talk to you about a couple things. I know I just did this video where I talked about how great this gear is, the night vision and thermal gear. But I tell you, I reached this conclusion a long time ago, and I know a lot of other folks have too, in case you haven't. I think we get to a certain point where we see maybe how likely an SHTF scenario is, or if you're like me, you see what could happen, how we could go from basically normal conditions to abnormal conditions very quickly. So if you are expecting an SHTF event, you're expecting the boogaloo, or you're like me, you understand that these things could happen, then you get to a certain point and it's like, well, we have to stop this focus solely on gear, only on hardware, and we have to begin developing our software. I'm hesitant to tell you this because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to start going to these local haunts and they're going to all be sold out. But there's a handful of bookstores throughout the Southeast. When I drive, I always stop by these great bookstores. And I want to encourage you to go by your local used bookstore or old antique bookstore, whatever you have, and see if there are any old manuals, FMs, TMs, doctrinal publications, whatever. There's a half a dozen different types of documents out there. And I don't buy all of them when I see them, but when I do come across one that could be helpful, I do buy this. So here's one that I purchased. It's actually been sitting in a stack of stuff probably for years. I'm finally getting around to it. It is called Introduction to Warfighting. And this is from the Sergeant's Distance Education Program. I guess it's probably document number 8014A. And this, I don't know, I probably paid like $2 or $3 for this. The Army used to have something very similar. They're called correspondence courses. I have no idea if they're even still doing that stuff, but we did them for promotion points. So at any rate, this is for if you were in the Marine Corps and you wanted to study warfighting, or you wanted to continue your education. This is the Sergeant's Distance Education Program. And I want to, in the very first chapter, page 1-5, Warfighting Concepts. I want to share something with you because it's very, very important. So they talk about a couple of very important things. We're going to be talking about friction and uncertainty, specifically how those two things relate to intelligence. Warfighting concepts. Here's a definition of friction. Friction is the force that resists all action and saps energy. Now we're talking about fighting a war, prosecuting a war. It resists your action and it saps your energy. Friction makes the simple difficult and the difficult seemingly impossible. And this concept of friction in warfare comes to us from Karl von Clausewitz. And basically he says, look, friction, they're all the potentially foreseen or unforeseen events and conditions that slow us down. Our plans do not unfold as we expect. These conditions don't develop. They take longer to develop. They take slower to develop. We miss our expectations, or reality does not align with our expectations. And all these things are called friction. And there are several different types of friction, and I want to share one with you now. Types of friction number 4 is self-induced friction. In other words, this is the friction that we do to ourselves, and there are some examples. Number 1, lack of a clearly defined goal. Number 2, lack of coordination. Number 3, unclear or complicated plans. Number 4, complex task organizations or command relationships. And 5, complicated technologies. I want to focus on the first and third here. I'm a big proponent of doing an area study, because in this area study, that is where we develop our local intelligence. In this area study, we want to figure out what's going to go wrong. We want to begin investigating the second and third order effects of that. How is this thing going to affect us? Is this something that happens 2 miles away? What does it look like once it ends on our doorstep? We want to look for people in the community who will cooperate with us, people who are interested in security, people who have families and don't want the negative effects of an SHTF event to affect them, whatever those negative effects may be. We also want to look at those people who are probably going to resist our efforts to bring security to our community, and so on and so forth. Guys, there's 6 layers of the operating environment. We take a look at all 6 layers, and we begin to develop some conclusions. So, number 1, the self-induced friction, the first example they give is a lack of a clearly defined goal. Now, once we understand the threat in our community, because we've done our area study, we understand what threats and conditions we're going to face, then we can begin to understand our mission. It's very difficult in intelligence. It's very difficult for us in intelligence to support a mission that we don't understand, or a mission that is not clearly defined, or an unclear or complicated mission. And so once we understand these threats and conditions we're going to face, then we can begin identifying our mission. So when people show up on my doorstep after an SHTF event and they say, "Hey Sam, you're the tinfoil hat guy who's thought through this stuff, and what are we going to do? What should our plans be? What is our goal?" I want to make sure that I have a clearly defined goal. I want to make sure that I'm not telling these people, "Hey guys, have a positive mental attitude because we're going to survive and thrive." Because frankly, if you're not doing an area study, that is essentially what you're telling yourself and other people, that you just hope to survive and thrive. Whereas if you have done an area study, then you're going to be able to say, look, here are the top 3 threats we're going to face, or here are the top 3 conditions that we are going to encounter. And now let's begin planning for dealing with these 3 or 5 or 10 effects that could end up threatening us. Here's the deal. If you don't do an area study, then you probably haven't identified all these threats. And if you haven't identified all the threats, then you certainly don't understand those threats. And if you don't understand those threats, you're not planning for them. And if you're not planning for those threats, you are going to encounter a significant amount of self-induced friction. So that's why we want to do an area study. So when people show up on my doorstep, I'm going to say, look, here's my area study. Here are my top 3 here are my top 3 considerations for what we need to start planning for. Here are the top 3 threats in the area, the top 3 conditions that could threaten us. And I want to have a clearly defined goal. This is a 1-sentence mission statement. It is going to be prevent the Leroy Jenkins gang from targeting our community. And I say, guys, this is our mission statement. This is what we have to do. If we accomplish this mission, then it means that we are going to be safe, at least from this Leroy Jenkins gang, which is just a made-up gang. Every area has one. It's your local criminal thugs who are up to no good. And I tell people that 1 sentence, and they say, man, that's a good idea. I can get on board with that. What do I need to do? How can I help? If I can't articulate that mission to people, if I can't sell them on that mission, then that mission is not going to be accomplished. If there is a lack of a clearly defined goal, which is self-induced friction, if I can't articulate that goal to people, then they are not going to understand it. And if they don't understand it, they're not going to help us achieve that goal. The third type of self-induced friction is unclear or complicated plans. Now remember, sometimes I forget, and maybe a lot of other veterans forget too. Sometimes I forget that I'm not dealing with a bunch of military people. So I'll use an acronym, and people are like, whew, and they stop listening. Their eyes gloss over. They stop the video because they have no idea what I'm talking about. They don't clearly understand what I'm trying to say. So when we start to look at plans, which is an ops function, I'm not an ops guy, I'm an intel guy. Intel feeds ops. So I make plans, but I'm not an ops guy. I make plans because I have to, because there is no one else around to make operational plans for me in this community. So when we're dealing with people, dealing with civilians, whoever they are, maybe even they're veterans, they just don't understand this stuff. We have to make sure that we're explaining this stuff in a clear way. And the better they understand, the better off we're all going to be. There's a concept called a common operating picture. And if everyone in my prepper group or everyone on my community security team, if we all have a common operating picture, that's why it's called a common, so we all want to understand the same operating picture, the more clearly they understand that common operating picture, the more likely it is that they're going to say, oh, hey, I have an idea. Here's what we can do, or here's how we can help solve this problem. And I'm like, dude, you know what? That's great. Let's go with it, because that beats what we had previously. So all this is to say, we don't want to experience self-induced friction. So do your area study, clearly define your goals or clearly define your mission, and then you're going to be able to have your community understand that. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is uncertainty. The great thing about intelligence is that it reduces uncertainty in the future. Uncertainty is a warfighting concept. I'm not going to read you the whole description, but I will tell you this. Page 1-6. The nature of war makes certainty impossible. There are going to be things that we don't know. There's always going to be things that we don't know. And occasionally on one of my videos, someone will say, oh yeah, I had my only experience with intelligence is that it was always wrong. Huh. Okay. Well, guys, intelligence is just like any other MOS. You're going to have shitbags who don't know what they do not understand what they're doing. And, maybe they lacked a mentor. Maybe they're trying to do their best and they just didn't have an E5 or CW2 or somebody, or CW4, CW5 to help coach them along, a warrant officer, to say, hey, here's how you actually do your job. Because I'll tell you, my first deployment, I got set down in a terminal, and they're at a JWICS and SIPR thing, and they're like, hey, read all these intelligence reports and tell us what you think. And that was part of my first tour in Afghanistan. So, it wasn't until later that I actually had somebody kind of take me under their wing. I got pimped out basically as an analyst. So at any rate, I didn't deploy with my actual unit. So all this is to say that there is going to be uncertainty, that you might luck out and you might get a rock star of an intel guy for your group who can train your group up in the ways of intelligence and help people understand these things and help people to understand that every person is an intelligence collector, whether passively or actively. They're hearing things, they're seeing things, they're experiencing things, and we have to make sure that that information is getting passed up to the intelligence element. And if that facilitation is not happening, then you're failing as the intel guy. So the last thing I'll say about uncertainty, number one, understand intelligence reduces uncertainty. Identify your intelligence gaps. Figure out what you don't know, but what you need to know, and then start. It's okay to be aggressive with your intelligence collection, right? It's okay to say, hey guys, here's our number one collection priority. We're going to spend this prepper group meeting, or we're going to spend the next 2 weeks, and we're going to find out as much as we can about the Leroy Jenkins gang. So get online, call your buddies at the sheriff's office, and let's start asking them about Leroy Jenkins gang. Let's try to figure out as much information as we can, because here's the thing. There are a lot of people, they will swear up and down all day long that there's going to be an SHTF event, there's going to be an EMP, there's going to be a catastrophic economic collapse, there's going to be this massive civil war where like tens of millions of Americans are fighting each other out in the streets and all this stuff. And, maybe they believe that. I will say, if they have not done an area study and they're not learning all they can, if they're not going by these bookstores and spending like $2 or $3 freaking bucks on this and flipping through the pages and learning some of these concepts that are going to take them from survive and thrive into actual, hey, I understand the knowledge, I have the knowledge and I understand the concepts that are going to see me through this SHTF event, whatever it may be. If they tell you that they believe that there's going to be a catastrophic economic collapse and they're not learning all they can, they're not upgrading their software, right? And they're just like, oh, I'm going to buy a bunch of guns and food and ammo and water and solar panels and we're going to get through this thing. And they don't have a conceptual understanding of any kind of security operations. Because look, you buy an AR-15 and some ammo, you're talking about security operations here. So if you don't understand how to prosecute that stuff, if you don't understand how to plan, if you don't understand how to gather information and produce intelligence, then you're setting yourself up to fail. You're sabotaging your own preparedness efforts if you don't understand this stuff. So I hope I've made that clear. if you want me to continue to pick through this intro to warfighting, I will do that. I'm just going to explain this stuff as it relates to intelligence because that's what I really know very well. And so if you want me to continue to do this stuff, and maybe even, we'll talk about maybe even jumping into some other books and manuals, and maybe this will just be my YouTube thing from now on, explaining intelligence as it pertains to these doctrinal publications so we can bring everyone up to speed on intelligence. Then let me know in the comments. Subscribe to this channel if you want to support me and kick me $2 a month or $5 or $10 a month because you really appreciate what I do here on YouTube, trying to teach this stuff. Then let me know. Go join my Patreon. I'll put a link down below. Guys, Area Study Live starts tomorrow, Tuesday, 15 October. You're going to get Charlie Hogwood and myself in this course teaching you how to build an area study. We're going to take 4 weeks. We're going to knock it out. We're going to get it done. We're going to be there to answer your questions, help guide and direct you as you build your own area study alongside the one that we are building. You can go to www.areastudylive.com. And that's all I have for today. If enough people like these types of videos, then I'll come back and do another one very shortly. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay out front.